Welcome to Break the Silence, Build the Future, a podcast dedicated to amplifying the voices of survivors and advocates while shedding light on the pervasive issue of gender based violence. Join us on a journey where survivors find strength in sharing their stories and experts offer profound insight into this critical societal issue. In today's episode, I am joined by Hope, a young woman who is going to share with us her experience in going through violence and coming on the other side. That's not her name to protect her identity because women who leave violent situations continue to experience consequence repercussions of their actions, whether that is to do with child custody, financial contributions, or legal issues. So we're going to not share her identity, her location, her name, and we're going to call her Hope, which is her story. Sharing her story, hopefully, will give hope to another woman who is struggling. Thank you for joining us, Hope.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I am excited to share my story. If I can help just one other young woman not go through the same thing that I did, then, I would feel very accomplished.
Thank you. I understand this is really this decision to share your story with me today did not come very easy to you, and it was something that you had to think about. And I am grateful, and I hope the audience that listens to your story will be grateful of both your courage and the risk you are taking, even though we are concealing your identity and your name is still to speak to it is a tough thing to do because it's almost like reliving and re-experiencing the things that you have went through at a really difficult time of your life, and you're very young, so that even makes it hard. So to start with, I want you to share a little bit about yourself without revealing any identifying details.
So I am in my late 20s. I work in finance. I have, I basically almost was born in the US, grew up here. I've always been a very extroverted person. I was always involved in clubs, extracurricular activities, community events, community activism. Um, I am a mother to one who keeps my hands very busy oftentimes. But honestly, I think in the last couple years, the main label or the main title or the main thing that I've been identifying the most with is honestly, I'm a survivor. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I'm a survivor of like narcissistic abuse, and that has left me with complex PTSD.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's definitely a challenging, even though I didn't experience directly through my daughter, I can relate to those ideas of really struggling in the challenges that you face. So after telling all those today, when we talked about this to do this interview, one of your concerns were to make sure that your identity is not revealed and you wanted to be anonymous, but it was also important to you to share your story, so we had to find the balance in that. So why did you choose sharing your story in an anonymous way? Why was that important to you?
So there's several reasons to my anonymity. I currently have a permanent restraining order against my abuser. He lives in the city that I grew up in and has made several attempts to my life during the time of that I was with him. But then also after I left, he's made several death threats. We currently have a legal case ongoing because when I finally did leave my abuser, he told me that if I cooperated with the state prosecutor's office in testifying to my abuse, that he would ensure that basically I went through the longest and most financially draining divorce case. And he has followed through on that threat as our divorce case has been going ongoing for the last 4 years.
Yeah, so that's it's not something that's just maybe you're thinking, but it's something that's clearly in your on your mind and clearly being stated to you, and you could see the evidence of it. So that's very clear. So how and please don't share if you can. Would you be able to tell us what were the first signs that this was not really what you thought to be? This relationship was not what you'd imagined, and you were in trouble. What were the early signs that you'd noticed without being specific?
Well, I will say this: hindsight is 2020. I think, given that I got married at a very young age, I wasn't even 20 when I got married. This was the first real relationship I had with a boy, much less a man that was 7 to 8 years my senior. Um, so there were several things that my abuser would do that I did not understand as abuse. Some examples are putting me down. So, making statements such as if I were to win an award at school for highest achievement or getting a really high GPA in my class, he would say, oh, like, he would either downplay that or try to make it seem like honestly it was nothing. So the relationship kind of built upon me seeking his approval through my accomplishments and him downplaying those accomplishments, whether it's me educational wise, whether it's financial wise, whether it's landing a really good job, which is ironic because, again, looking back, this is someone who did not have a high school diploma, much less a college degree.
Hmm.
So when they're telling me that I'm not that smart or that, oh, that's okay, but you must go to like a dumb school, that's probably why you have a high GPA.
Hmm.
Or, yeah, anybody can get a job with a Fortune 500 company, like very much downplaying my successes. And on top of that, would be very negative towards people that he deemed as less than him in a social status. So, for instance, if we were to go to a restaurant and the waitress may have gotten his order wrong or may have gotten something may have occurred that he didn't like, he would cuss at the waitress, berate them to the point where I would feel so uncomfortable sitting there. But again, being 19 years old, I'm thinking to myself, okay, he may be mean to other people, but he's not that way to me, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
What you don't realize is it, this person is only kind to you or treats you a certain way for as long as they feel like they can get something from you. Very
Hmm.
opportunistic. So I would say that is definitely a red flag that I missed. But I think the biggest red flag that I didn't know, I didn't understand how abuse escalates. I didn't understand how, um, like, domestic violence doesn't start with someone just randomly punching you out right out the gate.
Hmm.
Domestic violence starts with disrespect. So small things such as downplaying your successes, um, calling you, what he would do is he would insult me, but then pretend like it was a joke. So, for
Yeah.
instance, I would get compliments like, oh, you're beautiful, whatever, whatever, when we're out. And he would say, oh, even a monkey could look beautiful if you put makeup on a monkey or something like that. And then when I would confront him about those things, he would say, oh, you're super sensitive. You can't take a joke. Like, you don't know what joking is. So would make it seem like you were this hypersensitive, irrational person that was getting upset because you were being insulted. Um, so yeah, so abuse starts with disrespect. After the disrespect goes on, once someone disrespects you, if you let them cross that boundary, it just gets worse. It
Hmm.
will never get better. The minute you see that someone is disrespectful to you, I have yet to see a situation where it gets better. It gets worse and it gets progressively worse fairly quickly.
Hmm.
I think the first time that my abuser put hands on me, um, it was after an argument on my birthday,
Mm-hmm.
which honestly, every birthday with my abuser was a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Any sort of special event. So whether if it was my birthday, whether if it was a religious holiday, whether if it was Valentine's Day, any day that had a sort of significance to me was made like it was the worst time of my life. They would intentionally start problems, start arguments, which would then catastrophize and either become episodes of violence or become episodes of isolation.
Mm-hmm.
So it would either become, like, for instance, the first time that this person put hands on me, it was during my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
We had gotten into an argument about him going through my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And, he saw that I was messaging about an incident that happened at his family's home.
Mm-hmm.
And, he got upset that I was being honest with my friends and family about what I had seen in the family home. And, he shoved me down a flight of stairs. Um, that time after that happened and I left and I was like, you know what, I'm out. Not only was he crying and saying, oh my God, I don't know how that could have happened. I'm not a violent person. I've never put hands on anyone. That's my first time. So on
Mm-hmm.
one hand, you have him who is crying and making it seem like he's just so distraught by what he did, as
Yes.
though it was like something it, the way he was acting was he was in more distraught than I was. That's how it seemed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
on one hand, you had that, but on the other hand, and oftentimes you'll see this with like victims or survivors of domestic violence doesn't occur in a vacuum. It is a
Mm-hmm.
systematic thing that occurs. It
Mm-hmm.
occurs in silence and it's upheld by the people around like that are also condoning that behavior. For instance, for me, it was my in-laws. My mother-in-law called me and said, "Do you really want the shame of being a divorcee at 19? Is that what you want? Is that the shame? You'll then become untouchable. That's what you're setting yourself up, and you're already gonna ruin your life over this one mistake that my son made. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe if you weren't telling our family business, then you would not have been abused. Basically, my son would not have pushed you down a flight of stairs.
Mm-hmm.
So having that from someone that you consider an elder, someone that you consider you respect, that's your mother-in-law, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having that on one hand, on the other hand, that this person that you loved is basically kind of throwing an adult tantrum and crying their head off, saying that they're so sorry and that it'll never happen again. Um, so going back and taking that person back and saying like, okay, listen, but that can never happen again,
Mm-hmm.
and for it only to continue. I think my biggest advice is the minute someone puts hands on you, you should leave. Honestly, you should leave after the disrespect. But if
Mm-hmm.
if you end up staying until the person puts their hands on you, don't ever take them back. Because the
Mm-hmm.
minute that they see that they can put their hands on you once, there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing preventing them from doing it over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. I don't know about you, but anytime I heard, violence against women or, domestic violence, domestic abuse, what comes to mind is the physical injury, right? The black eye, bruised body, broken bones. But we never really educate people in what are the forms. It's by the time you get to the physical violence, you have suffered through so much abuse. It doesn't just start with the physical violence. Somebody doesn't marry you today and then smack you upside the head tomorrow. It's this progression of things. Like you said, it's systematic. I like that how you said it's systematic and sustained abuse that gets worse and worse. And more you take in, the worse it gets.
Yes, oftentimes when people ask me about life after dealing with a narcissist or life after basically leaving abuse, I tell people, I say, as much as the physical violence is terrible, my broken bones are healed. My
Yeah.
bruises have healed. The scars on my body, yes, there's scars on my body because of this abuse, but they have healed. The
Hmm.
one thing that will never heal is the psychological damage that this person's abuse did to me, to the point
Hmm.
where I have
Hmm.
been diagnosed with complex PTSD,
Yeah.
which is something that veterans that have fought in a war
Hmm.
have been diagnosed with. So to have someone impact your mental state to that point, it's a different level of abuse that honestly sometimes you can only understand if you've been in it.
Hmm.
So I'll just give you a couple examples of the types of abuse. I would say the first type of abuse that I mentioned was kind of putting someone down. So
Hmm.
I was a very confident person. Like I said, I was an extrovert. I was very confident. I was in a lot of leadership positions
Hmm.
in various forms, whether that was within the community, within the school, within my job. I was in a lot of positions that had high visibility. What my abuser would do is that he would try to downplay who I am and what my worth is.
Hmm.
And because, again, this is somebody that you love, you care about their opinion. When my abuser met me, I used to wear colorful clothes all the time. I used to love wearing colors, yellows, orange. There wasn't a color that I met that I didn't like. The minute after my abuser and I got married, he started making comments like, oh, only ghetto fabulous girls wear all these bright colors. It's so immature. It's so loud. You look ugly. When you wear these bright colors, you look as dark as charcoal. Would just make very strange comments
Hmm.
that would have me looking back at myself and as I'm getting ready in the morning thinking, is that how I look? Or is that how people are viewing me? Do
Hmm.
people view me as immature? Do people not take me serious because I'm wearing these bright colors? And I would stop. I changed my entire wardrobe. I started wearing blacks. I started wearing neutrals, and then it became, oh, girls that wear a lot of makeup are promiscuous. They are just out here kind of being like sluts in the workplace. All of these kind of negative connotations about women and wearing makeup. And
Hmm.
I wore makeup and I love makeup. So it got to the point where, again, I stopped doing these things, even though these are things that made me happy. I wasn't, you don't wear these bright colors because you think, oh, the people are going to like that I'm wearing these colors. No, you wear things that make you happy. You do things that
Yes.
make you happy. So, kind of slowly chipping away at who you are was for me one of the first abuses that I sustained. The second was verbal abuse. I did not grow up in a family or in a household where people would cuss at each other. I did
Right.
not grow up in a family or household where like people would insult each other. Even
Hmm.
if you were to get in an argument with your siblings or cousins, it never got to the point where it was disrespectful in that sense. Whereas the minute that I got married to my abuser, he would cuss at me. He would call me things like CUNT. He would call me like just all sorts of very derogatory words that I was not used to hearing. One,
Hmm.
two, it just like when you can tell that cussing and rude language is very regular for someone, the speed
Hmm.
at which it comes out, it's
Yeah.
just like it he was spewing this negativity like it was water.
Yeah.
And when I would go see his family and I would see how they would then cuss themselves out, like within
Yeah.
the family, the siblings, whether they're calling each other a fat cow or things like that, I then realized that this is not my culture. This is not what I'm accustomed to, nor is it how I want to be spoken to. And I didn't know, obviously, again, being 19, I didn't know what setting a boundary is, but I spoke up. I said, hey, I don't appreciate being talked to. My mother doesn't talk to me that way. My father doesn't talk to me that way. No one in my family speaks to me that way.
Hmm.
Like, don't speak to me that way. But again, I was gaslit. I was told, oh, you're really sensitive, like you're overly sensitive, like you're just kind of going on about like making things such a big deal. It's not even a big deal, like it's just a joke. And it would bother me because again, these are hurtful terms, these are hurtful languages And at the same time, like no one deserves to be called outside of their name. The verbal abuse escalates. So
Mm-hmm.
first it's just calling you out of your name, cussing you out. But then it gets to the point where once the person sees what I now know that it's called gray rocking, what I was doing, but I didn't know it was called gray rocking at the time. It was basically what I would do is I would try my best to mentally block this person out. When they
Yeah.
were me out, when they were saying negative things about me, I would try to mentally be elsewhere or mentally be ignoring them or try
Mm-hmm.
to put headphones on and ignore them so
Mm-hmm.
that then I don't have to hear this and it doesn't have to impact me. When he would see that I would do that, what he would do is he would then come into my face, into my personal space. He would
Mm-hmm.
take his finger, push it into my face, cuss me out, like to the point where he was so close, his spit was on my face. And if I would make any attempt at moving, like
Mm-hmm.
getting up and walking away, I couldn't do that. He would then shove me back down and continue cussing at my face. And then later, once the situation de-escalates and he feels like he has said all he needs to say off his chest, once I would approach him and say, hey, like you can't put your hands on me. I was trying to leave. He would say, I didn't put my hands on you. You tried to get up and you walked into me. Mind
Yeah.
you, this is someone who's invading my personal space. How did I walk into someone that is leaning over me? That
Mm-hmm.
means you're saying I cannot move, I cannot exit, I cannot. You're basically holding me there as prisoner to listen to you verbally abuse me
Mm-hmm.
because you saw that I was ignoring you. And it would be like, as this person was towering above me, mind you, there was a stark difference in size too. This
Yeah.
man was nearly 300 pounds. At the time of that I was with this man, I was 110.
Mm-hmm.
That's nearly 200-pound difference, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So when he's shoving me on like wherever I'm sitting to cuss me out, there I am feeling now powerless because
Mm-hmm.
I'm home alone with this person.
Right.
There's no one else here but me and him.
Yeah.
He is clearly acting irrational by shouting, yelling, cussing at me, being in my space. I
Mm-hmm.
feel uncomfortable because, again, this is not behavior that I was ever exposed to,
Yeah.
right? This is not
Yeah.
the type of behavior that I ever saw in my household growing up. Later on, they will come apologize and say, well, I'm sorry you made me act like that because, like you did X, Y, and Z. And it got to the point where you made me do this. Like, there was no other way for me to control you. And you need to learn how to behave. Otherwise, this is what I'm going to do. Like, you're forcing me to do this.
It
Yeah,
becomes your fault.
exactly. Like, you can't be upset at me because you are forcing me to do this. And for a long time, unfortunately, when I would reach out to his family and say, hey, he's doing X, Y, and Z to me, like, this is not okay. And they would say, well, what are you doing? What what in your behavior is triggering him to cause him to do this to you? Re-emphasizing same language that he just said of, hey, you're causing me to do this. When in reality, no one can force someone to do something
Yeah.
unless someone is taking a gun to your head. And even then, you have the choice, right?
Yes.
It's ironic that that rhetoric of what are you doing or you're making this person act this way is only used when someone is being abused, when an abuser is abusing a victim. That is the only time this rhetoric is used because
Yes.
you don't see that rhetoric used at work
No, you
when
don't.
your boss is coming on top of you saying you need to do X, Y, and Z, and now you're attacking your boss, whether verbally or physically. No one is like, oh, well, boss man, like, what did you do to provoke your employee?
Yeah.
Maybe you should change that behavior. No, that rhetoric is only used when an abuser is abusing their victim, which is the strangest. And it's like you don't realize that when, again, you're young. So I'd reach out to the family, I'd reach out to the community, I would reach out to the religious leaders. I would say, hey, this person is abusing me. This is what's going on. And they would say, hey, like, maybe if you were a better wife, this wouldn't be happening.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you cooked 3 meals at home while you worked your full-time job, like maybe then this man wouldn't be abusing you. Or they would say, it's fine. As he gets older, he'll stop abusing you. Just be patient. So not really getting any sort of help in the verbal and physical aspect. Now, that was just physical of like pushing and shoving. And then it escalates. So
Mm-hmm.
we talked about the devaluation, the putting you
Mm-hmm.
down, trying to make sure like you're nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Then it got to the verbal abuse. Then the third stage is physical abuse, but with gaslighting. So I'll give you examples. One thing that my ex would do often is anytime we would get into an argument or we would have a disagreement, if I would be walking down the stairs, he would run down the stairs and shove me like using his shoulders. So kind of
Yeah.
like what footballers do or quarterbacks do when they're
Mm-hmm.
doing like a tackle. He would shove me and I would hit the wall. So imagine if a staircase, there's a wall on one side and it's open on the other side. He'd come from the other side and shove me and I would hit the wall. Or as he's passing by me in a kitchen or something, he would shove me. I would hit the wall. I would bruise because, again, this person is 300 pounds. I'm 110 pounds. He's shoving me and I'm hitting a wall. I'm going to get hurt. When I would call him out on these things, he would say, oh, I didn't push you. You're just clumsy. You bumped into me and you went flying into the wall and
Mm-hmm.
you got hurt. And it got to the point where even at one time I spoke to my family and they even talked to him and he said, oh, like I was just joking with her. Like I was just play housing with her. I was just play wrestling with her.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, on one hand, you have this person that is appearing to seem very charming, seem very nice. And he's like, oh, I'm just playing with my wife. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just joking with her. On the other hand, you have me who's saying, look, I'm bruised. I'm hitting walls. Even if he's claiming that this is a joke or play housing or wrestling, I
Mm-hmm.
don't like it. I don't want to be shoved. Got to the point where families would feel uncomfortable because they didn't know how to handle it. They're like, how do we get in between these two people? One person saying that they're being hit, the other person saying they're joking. This person is not only abusing you psychologically and verbally at home, but they are now also running a campaign against you outside. And who are they running a campaign against you with? With your friends, with your family, isolating you intentionally from your friends, your family, your loved ones, the people that are closest to you. And you don't know this because, again, when you try to leave, they make it seem like, oh, you're never home and you're always trying to go see your family. Or at the time, we only had my car. He would just go take my car and be gone. I wouldn't be able to see my family, or he would hide my keys. One thing he used to love doing is just hide my keys places to the point where I wouldn't be able to find them to go see whether it's my family, whether it's my friends. He's going behind my back and saying, she's being so moody today. She doesn't want to come out. She doesn't want to come see you. Oh, she's telling me that she doesn't like you. She said that she's not trying to hang out. I keep telling her, why don't you go hang out with your family? Why don't you go hang out with your cousins? She's telling me that you guys are jealous of her. She's telling me that you guys just want to break up her marriage. Things like that. These are the
Yeah.
things that he was saying behind my back. I would say outside of the physical abuse, the psychological abuse, this is a pain point in my heart that I will never be able to get back.
Mm-hmm.
He methodically ruined my relationship with my mother. And
Yeah.
I was very close with my mother. My
Mm-hmm.
mother and I were best friends. I would tell her everything. He would take my phone and send himself text messages
Mm-hmm.
saying that my mom is the B word, saying that my mom is bad, saying not to talk to my mom, just very outlandish things, right? And
Making it look like
he
you
would,
are sending that to him, talking about your
yes,
mother.
yes. So he would then delete the text messages from my phone. So I have no idea what he sent himself. He would then later, after me begging and pleading him, hey, can you go help my parents at home doing X, Y, and Z, right? He would go there to go help them after I'm the one who sent him. He would go there, pretend like it was his idea to go there and help them. And
Mm-hmm.
while he's there, he would show my mother these text messages and say, oh my God, like, I just don't know why your daughter feels this way about you. You're so sweet. You're such a great mother in law. I don't understand. Like, I would hate to have a child so ungrateful like her because look at how she's talking about you. And this, again, like my mother being who she is, she never approached me. She never said, hey, like your abuser showed me these text messages that you sent him. Like, is this true? No. Instead, my mom, just kept quiet because again, she wasn't trying to start problems in a marriage, right? And so what she did was she kept quiet, but then it caused a lot of friction between her and I. And I didn't understand where that friction was coming from.
Mhm.
But in creating that friction, it became to the point where I felt so isolated that I had no one to go to. When the
Mhm.
abuse was at its peak, at its worst, I had no one to turn to
Mhm.
because I was already isolated from everyone. He had
Mhm.
already run a campaign that wasn't even true. And the person that was the closest to me, he made it seem like I was just out here bad mouthing her. So I think that was one of the roughest times because not only to be getting abused, but also your source of comfort being your mother being taken away from you without
Mhm.
you understanding what's going on. The physical abuse, it hurts. Obviously, nobody likes to be beat, nobody likes to be punched. My abuser was very smart in the sense that he would intentionally beat me in places where I would bruise. For instance, I dress very modestly. What my abuser would do is he would punch me on my upper thighs where it meets my groin
Mhm.
because he knows that I will most likely not be taking off my pants and showing people all the way to my underwear where my bruises are, or will punch me in my stomach. For instance, when I was 6 months pregnant, he kneed me in the stomach while slapping me across the face. One time I had his fingerprints from one of the several times he strangled me, right, in an attempt to end my life.
Mhm.
And I remember I had to wear a turtleneck for at least a month during the summer. I felt like not only was it intentional in having me feel shame in having to cover up these bruises, but also it was a form of control because this person, for instance, did not like me showing my neck.
Mhm.
And how did he feel like he could stop that from happening? By creating bruises on there that would make me feel ashamed and not want to answer questions and cover that neck. And so
Mhm.
his end goal was met regardless. You become so numb. You are suffering psychologically. It's someone who makes you question your sanity. It's not like, oh, you have an argument, you get beat. No. Sometimes this person would have a terrible day at work
Mhm.
and their boss was terrible to them. And what would they do? They would then take that out on me.
Mhm.
So I had to be on edge 24/7, apprehensive. Not only that, but you're also being abused financially. I was being drained financially the entire time I was with this person. I was not in charge of my own money. He would take my money and claim he would use it to pay bills or whatever the case is. But then I was not allowed to then use my money on myself, on my
Mhm.
family. I used to send my family money. He would
Mhm.
say, no, you can't send them money, or that's too much. You're not going to send them that. But then would take from my money to send to his family.
Mhm.
I wasn't allowed to do simple things like going to go get my nails done. Mind you, I'm working like 80 hours a week and I'm being told that I can't use my own money to go get my nails done. And
Mhm.
I would be told, oh, like you're not smart with money. You're actually really dumb. You're really reckless with money. Mind you, I'm the one that has an MBA in finance to the point where, mind you, this is going on while you're also being physically abused. And you
Mhm.
realize that every time you try to stand up for yourself or you argue with this person when it comes to money, you end up losing physically. Like, so basically, if I'm arguing for whatever, like me getting my nails done, I have to weigh is it worth me arguing with this person about me getting my nails done? What if that night I'm going to get my rib broken? Like, what is worse? Like getting to miss out on my paycheck, somebody harming my body, living in that survival mode of like, okay, how can I de-escalate, de-escalate, de-escalate? I went from being a normal human being to now having to be an expert body language reader because
Mhm.
I knew that if I didn't, I wasn't going to survive. Like I wasn't going to make it. What my ex would do is he would immediately after, maybe like 10 to 15 minutes after he's done hitting me, he would come back, sit on the edge of the bed and cry. Like I mean like tears, snot, everything, bawling, crying and
Mhm.
say, "Oh my God, like I cannot believe you've gotten me to the place where this is who I've become." and I never imagined myself being like this, and I hate that you make me hit you, but it's like if only you learned how to behave, then I wouldn't need to do this. Me seeing a grown man who's almost 10 years older than me,
Mhm.
bawling, crying. I'm sitting there consoling him about him crying because he hit me. So I'm sitting here saying, I understand, but you can't keep hitting me. Like, that's not okay. Look at these bruises. And he's like, I just need you to behave. And I'm like, I am behaving. I don't understand what you want. As the years progressed,
Mhm.
um, he would try the same thing where he would cry and stuff. And when he would see that I was not coming to console him,
Mhm.
his tears would dry up instantly. And that's when I realized the monster that I was dealing with is when I
Mhm.
saw this grown man who's boo crying with snot, tears, everything. And the moment he says, "Oh, you're not gonna come and check to see if I'm okay," and I'm
Mhm.
saying, "No, I'm not," and his tears dry up like this, that's when
Mhm.
I realized this man is a monster. The physical violence then escalates because then he realized you have no empathy. So then he no longer has to pretend to have any sort of human decency. So
Mhm.
then the violence just continues.
Mhm.
Instead of before, he would say, "This is what you made me do to you." Now he's saying, "This is what you deserve." You know,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
you deserve to be treated like trash. You deserve to be treated like subhuman. Um, like you're nothing, basically. That's a favorite thing that he used to say to me often is you're nothing. You're
Mhm.
nothing. The reason I remained silent for such a long time was because I believed if I told people, they wouldn't believe me. No one
Mhm.
would believe that this charming person who seems so nice when we go out to
Yeah.
dinner, he would like pay for the bill, he would cover everyone's meal, he was loud, like he was just like out there, and all of a sudden I became this quiet person who wouldn't talk. Because
Mhm.
again, I'm just at that point I was a shell of a human being. I no
Mhm.
longer was the person I was when I met this person.
Mhm.
This person sucked the life and the soul out of me. But also I felt like I was going crazy. So to kind of rewind a little bit, when I would mention about the shoving and pushing me against the walls, he would claim sometimes that I would be falling. He was like, "Oh, you don't remember? Like you fell. Like, oh, maybe you should go get tested for um, early onset Alzheimer's. I know it runs in your family. Like you might be getting it because how do you not remember falling? How do you not remember getting hurt? Like you hurt yourself."
Wow.
And mind
Wow.
you, your brain is telling you, no, this person shoved you, but this
Yeah.
person is looking at you dead in the eye and telling you, you fell. Like, I wasn't even here. I wasn't even in the house when that happened. On
Mhm.
top of not just saying that to you, but then also doing things around the house to make you doubt your sanity. So
Yes.
once he would take my keys from the key hanger at the front door and put them inside the fridge. And then in the morning, I'd be running late for work. And I'd be like, where are my keys? Where are my keys? Where are my keys? And I'm waking him up. I'm like, hey, where's my keys? And he's helping me look for them. And
Mhm.
he's pulling them out the fridge and saying, wow, like you really are losing your mind. Like you put your keys in the fridge or like moving things around in the house. So imagine I put my phone down on the couch next to me. I go to the bathroom. I come back. My phone is gone. He's like, what are you talking about? You never had your phone here. I didn't see your phone. I haven't seen your phone all day. Maybe you left it at work. Me looking for my phone the entire
Yeah.
night. I'm like, I just left it on the couch. And he's like, I'm not sure what you're talking about, but there was no phone here. And then you finding it later the next day in the most randomest place, like in the shoe closet. And you're just like, you should make an appointment with a neurologist and go get checked. And now you're like, I think I'm going insane. What I started doing, which ended up helping me actually, is I started recording things. I started doing voice recordings. Every
Mhm.
time I saw an incident that's about to escalate, I would touch the voice recorder. And because I wanted a sanity check for myself. And there's this small part in my brain that's telling me this is what you saw. Yet this person is telling you point blank to your face, that did never happen. That
Mhm.
didn't happen. It wasn't like that. Like you're confused. So I began voice recording. And sometimes again, when I would confront him and I would say this and this happened, like and he would say, no, it didn't. and I would like, re-listen to the audio and like know to myself, no, it did happen. But then when he realized that, hey, his gaslighting is no longer working, and
Mhm.
somehow I keep retaining the memory of what is going on and the abuse that
Mhm.
I'm suffering. And at that point, he starts trying to figure out what am I doing on my phone. So it began then, like where he would go and delete the voice recordings, or he would go into my phone, or he would just break my phone. If he couldn't get into it, he would just break it, and then I would have to start from scratch. But I ended up using those voice recordings in both the divorce case and the criminal case because I was collecting them for evidence, but I was collecting them for my own sanity. Where
Mhm.
you're like, I am going insane. And ironically, even though I had these voice recordings and even though I had multiple like evidences of this person's abuse of me, people still had a hard time believing this is who this man was. Despite the audio recordings, the video recordings, the text messages, everything, despite all of that, they still had a hard time believing because they didn't understand how someone could act like that.
Mhm.
How could someone wear a mask to that extent? I come from a community where you don't call the cops. You don't involve the government, that it's just handled in house, but no one wanted to handle it in house because no one
Mhm.
wanted to help me.
What do you think would have helped you if the community, family, friends, your schooling, your society, what could have been done for you to have the knowledge or have the skills to identify the danger either before getting into the relationship or after getting to the relationship and not staying as long as you did?
I would say there's several things, and I'll do a two-pronged approach, right?
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
first one being what are things that I feel like I could have been educated on is teaching children what the signs of abuse look like, because there are so many signs of abuse that we don't know how to identify
Mhm.
unless someone tells you, hey, that's considered abuse, right? Putting
Mhm.
someone like devaluation of someone, that is a form of abuse.
Mhm.
Verbal abuse where you're being called out of your name, and
Mhm.
financial, like when someone's taking control of your paycheck and telling you what you can and can't use your own money for and not giving you the freedom to use your own money. That's
Mhm.
abuse.
Mhm.
Freedom of movement, like being able to leave the house, come back, things like that. These are all abuses. And when I was going through the criminal trial, they had a worksheet that kind of listed even some of the most minor things as, hey,
Mhm.
these are signs of abuse. I think it's very important to teach young adults and young people what those signs look like and what is a sign of an unhealthy relationship. The second pronged approach is within our community. There are so many people within the community that don't understand what abuse looks like,
Mhm.
and instead will tell you to be patient.
Mhm.
Patience is not the answer. Divorce was created for a reason. It doesn't matter if you as the community look down on it, it would not exist if there wasn't a reason for it to
Right.
exist.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that every single person should get a divorce because of a small argument, but I
Mhm.
am saying that do not shame women into leaving a marriage. I don't care if it's one day into the marriage, it could be a few
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
If that person gets abused, it doesn't just have to be physical abuse. It could be mental, it could be
Mhm.
verbal, it could be financial, whatever kind of abuse, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And also, another thing that we in the community need to understand is to learn to believe victims. I'm
Mhm.
not sure when this occurred in my community, but there's this stigma of automatically assuming that women are lying, automatically assuming that if a woman says that a man is abusing her, she's jealous or something is unhinged within her. But understanding that it takes a lot for a victim to come forward.
Mhm.
It's not something that we do lightly. It is not, it's one of the most embarrassing, like most humiliating moments is it feels like you are publicly unraveling all of your deepest and darkest moments. You're becoming essentially very vulnerable to these people by coming forward. and to then have that slapped in your face by assuming like that you're lying. So I think a big part is really re-educating my community on what their rights are. Like a
Yeah.
lot of them don't understand that this goes against both your religion, your culture, and the laws.
Thank you so much, Hope, for joining us. I envision a future where survivors feel safer in sharing their stories and we're not seeking for being too anonymous, and the society listening, like you said, to people that are trying to get out a difficult situation before they lose their life or they are struggling with a lot of traumas that they have experienced. But I appreciate you are reliving some of the darkest times of your life. I'm hoping for other young women, young men could hear this story and the steps you have taken us through of when to realize and how to share your challenge with other people and not allowing the silence and the shame of being in that situation keep you from seeking the support you need and the community understanding. This has been another episode of Break the Silence, Build the Future. Until next time, bye for now.